Okay, next on the docket, picking up where we left off, this is video number 4 for data science building blocks. We're going to go over index match formulas and Vlookup formulas. So if you've been following along, go to your data science building blocks 1 worksheet. Maybe we'll get up to 2 eventually, but for now we'll just keep using this one. If you haven't been following along, I highly encourage you to do so. Just go back and look at the prior 3 videos to catch up to where we are here. They're not that long. However, if you just want to see index matches and VLOOKUPs in action, go to the time at the bottom of this video. But we'll start right here on the pivot table tab again. Okay, so here in H4, actually let's just go ahead and click this plus sign down here to make a new tab, and we will call it Vlookup. What we actually need here in column A is a list of unique values. So I'll go ahead and just demonstrate this part again. If you go to the data table, start in cell A2, Control Shift, hold that together and down arrow, then Control C to copy, back to your VLOOKUP tab and a right click paste values, the 1, 2, 3 here. We will go to then data, this icon to remove duplicates, column A is what we want, okay. And now we're left with 15 unique values. Say we were given this, double click here to expand, and we want to know the average life expectancy of Japan, and we know it already exists somewhere, and we want to look it up. We can do that by going to cell B1 and doing an equals Vlookup, and it gives you a little info here. It looks for a value in the leftmost column of the table, turns value in the same row from a column you specify. So I'll tab or double click the formula, and here we want to give it a lookup value. In cell A1, Japan is what we want to look up. If you saw my last video, you saw a little tutorial on locking cells. All of our lookup values are in column A, so I want to lock column A by doing F4. I don't want to lock row 1, however, because I care about what's in row 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. So I'll keep clicking F4 so the $ is just before A to lock the column only. Then I'll do a comma. Now it's asking for the table array. So remember, we're looking for the leftmost column. I'm looking up the average in this table here, the one that we've created. I know that the average is here in column F. So the array is right here if I want to look up the average, and our lookup value is in the leftmost column. I'm looking up Australia, I see it here in the leftmost column. A lot of times you'll use the column name to help you out here. We didn't put one here because we have the data table already with our column name. We don't want to do a lookup off of that because everything is not grouped in the raw data, it's grouped on these 2 tabs. In other words, Australia only exists in one place here, which we need to be the case to look up the average. If we try to do a VLOOKUP on the data table, there are too many Australias in the leftmost column and it won't know what to do. We're just doing a lookup, that's it. So right here, this array will never change, so I can do an F4, and I don't even need to click up the formula. I can just do F4 after I select it. It will lock everything. Remember to do your column lock and your comma before you move to the next argument. So now it's column index. I'll go back to the VLOOKUP tab. You can either leave that VLOOKUP or get rid of it. It's just telling you what tab you're on. And the index number, actually in this case you do have to get rid of it because we're not using the index number from here. It's 2. It's our index number is 2 because on the pivot table here we care about the second column in the array we selected. Right? We selected E and F, so we're looking up in column E, and then it's the second column of that array. E is 1, F is 2, that we actually want it to return, the average life expectancy. So if I go back here, this already completed the formula, but we're not quite done yet, so I will click it again, backspace, do another comma, and this 4th argument here, which is optional. True or false will yield the same thing in this case, but we want to do false because we want an exact match. We know that these are right, and we know that they match what's in our data, so let's do a false and then close parenthesis. Now that'll give us our average, and we can do a double click, drag all the way down, because we have only column A locked, not the rows. So if I do an F2 or double click anywhere here, you can see that I'm using Canada as the lookup value. I'm using that same 2-column array for every single cell here in column B, and I'm looking up the second value in that array as an exact match. Okay, so let's do some cleanup here. Click on row 1, right click, insert. That will insert a row above it. Let's just do country. We're just naming our columns, and average life expectancy. So that's what we looked up. We can practice again by just doing a quick sum life expectancy. Not sure why we'd care about this, but we have the power to look it up. So again, equals Vlookup. Very quickly here, I'll just select A, do an F4, lock column A, comma, go back here. Now I'm going to select this entire array because sum is at the very end, lock everything again. This will never change, comma. Don't navigate away from this tab this time, just do a 3. Now we care about the third column, we care about the sum, right? So put 3 because sum is in the third column. One more comma and then false again for an exact match. Close it. You don't need to navigate away from this tab to complete your formula. You're done, just click enter and here's the sum. Double click and there we go. So next we want to demonstrate an index match. I'll make another tab and we have to do a little bit of work here to demonstrate this. So let's go to data table and make another pivot table very quickly. I'll select the entire table, insert pivot table, and we'll do this on a new worksheet as well. And I'll click expand this, move sheet 3 past Vlookup, double click to rename. Let's just call this pivot table 2, and let's do entity in rows, and now let's do year in columns, and life expectancy we'll change to an average. And I may be blocking your view here, but we've already done this, so I trust that you can get to here. The only difference really is making sure that your years are in your columns, not your rows. So this is a pretty big table. An index match will help us locate exactly what we want in this table. And we'll just do our index match right off of the pivot table in sheet 2. So back to our blank sheet 2, double click, we'll just do index match. So say we want, or say we have rather, Japan and the year 1852. How would we find this value? What is the average life expectancy for Japan in 1852? Well, an index match can help us get there. So if I do equals index, so we're used to getting arguments like this after typing in a function name. You see here that index wants array, row number, and column number. So let's go back to the pivot table 2 tab and select all of our data excluding the column labels and the row labels. We just want the data in this case. We also do not want grand totals. So we can go all the way to the end, don't grab the grand total, lock this here, and then do comma to move to the second argument. This is where we want the row number, but we don't always know where Japan in this case is going to fall. We want it to be dynamic, so we'll start a match function here for the second argument. You can see that now we have a list of other inputs. So lookup value, lookup array, and match type. That will be exact or a fuzzy match, but we're going to want exact here because we know Japan falls on this list. So let's go back to the index match tab and look up Japan in this case. And we can put more countries underneath this and use the function in the same way. So let's just lock column A and keep the rows dynamic. So $ in front of A. Next argument for the match function, we're going to look up Japan. So we want to go all the way back to the beginning. I did Control FN home on Windows. Just select your countries, don't select the row labels, don't select the grand total, because remember we started our data array in the very first argument up here in B5 and went down to B19. So the row number we want it to be determined from A5 to A19. Lock that, that will never change, and as I said, do 0 for exact match here. It pops up, I'll just double click it and close the argument. So now column number is the exact same thing. We want it to be dynamic. So let's start another match argument and do the same exact thing for the columns. We want to look up the year, and in this case we can put more years on the top. So let's lock now the row 1 in this case, not the column. So F4 twice, or $ in front of the 1. We'll lock 1852 in this case, row 1. Do a comma. Now your lookup array is just going to be the columns. So Control Shift right on the pivot table 2 tab to select everything. Don't forget to lock that. Another exact match. Close the match function, and now we've completed the third argument of the index function. So one more parenthesis to close the index function and enter. And there you have 36.42. We can keep going with this now. If we do 1850, for example, actually 1800, and add China to our rows, you can see now that we can just click here, drag to the right, drag down, and we see that we have 32 in 1800 for China. So let's just check and see if that's right. It should be in the first column here. So if we go back, China, we see a 32 for 1800. That's great, that's what we're looking for. We can add any number of countries here in column A, any number of years in column D, assuming they exist in the pivot table 2 tab, and this will give us our information. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick tutorial on index match functions. We're really starting to build now, and in the next video we'll keep expanding. If you haven't caught up with us yet, there aren't that many videos that I've done up to this point, so go back and catch up, and we'll see you in the next one.